So, welcome back to the next session on resistance to change. You know that before this session we have been discussing about various models and frameworks which can be used to diagnose change, because if you want to implement change you need to identify where the change is required, whether the change is required in the structural aspects, HR aspects, technology, culture or people related issues, because these are the 5 focal areas where the change happens. Now, when we are discussing about implementing change, one important aspect that we need to discuss that whether employees are ready to accept change or not, right. Because the moment you talk about change in the organization, you will find that employees start resisting about it. They do not want to go for a change, they need to maintain a status quo or they want to maintain a status quo, because they think that whatever change the organization is going to bring, whether it is going to be successful or not, what will happen to them. So, lot of anxiety, uncertainty is created when you are going to introduce any change in any of these focal areas that we have discussed so far. Irrespective of what models you have used, what frameworks you have used to analyze and diagnose the kind of change that you want to bring, it is very important for the change managers to understand that what needs to be done to manage resistance. So, what we are going to discuss in this session is that how do we go about resisting change, so that the change is going to be successfully implemented in the organization, because ultimately who is going to carry out or implement the change in the organization? It is the people. So, you must communicate and make them understand that why we want to go for this kind of change, so that you are able to reduce the level of resistance. Now, based on this say preamble, we are going to discuss about this topic on resistance to change. You know that it is very real, because the moment you think about change, people become skeptical and they think that this is not good. Okay. They find that some kind of uncertainty is associated with any kind of change, right. So, the change managers are going to face this kind of issue whenever they want to go for implementing the change in any organization. Now, if you look at this resistance or any change, it has 3 major components, and that is why it is tridimensional in nature, and these 3 components include affective, cognitive and behavioral. Now, suppose you want to go for a change, let us take an example. Suppose you want to bring about a change in the structure of the organization, or suppose you want to bring about a change in the technology of the organization. Technology means that how the system is going to produce certain goods or services, right. The moment you think about bringing about a change in the technology or the structure, or even when you are going to change about say the HR policy of the organization, right. Suppose you want to bring about a change in the performance management system. The moment you think about it and communicate it to the managers, they become skeptical about it, that why we want to go for this kind of change in the performance management system or the technology or the HR policy of the organization, because they think that the system has been doing very well. They are not basically communicated about the benefits of the change, right. So, it is very important to understand it from the perspectives of the employees who are going to resist to these changes. There could be a number of factors which could be related with the resistance of change, but what is more important here is to understand the concept first, and then we will discuss what are the factors which could be associated with resistance to change. Now, if you look at the resistance as such, it has, as I told you, that the effective component is that the moment you introduce a change or you want to say that okay, we want to go for this kind of change, people start thinking about it. So, effective component is that how a person feel about the change, right. Then cognitive, what they think about it, that how it is going to affect them, right. Then behavioral, how they are going to act in the face of the change, right. Suppose you go for a technological changes. So, if you bring about a change in the technology, then there is a possibility that people need to learn and work to in order to work with the new technology, and sometimes people may not be ready to accept these kind of things, because they are habituated to work with the kind of systems and processes which they have, right. So, all these are important. So, sometimes you accept it, sometimes you do not accept it, right. So, what is very important is that kind of behavior which is being reflected or displayed by the people in face of any change. Sometimes you become active in the sense that you react to the change, or sometimes you do not react to the change, though you whether you like it or not, but you become passive, right. So, you are not going to react to the changes that is going to happen, or sometimes you react to the changes. So, the behavioral response is very important, whether it is an active form or passive form, both need to be managed effectively, right. For example, even if you are not reacting to the change, you are become passive, even then it suggests that you are not supporting this kind of change, right. Or if you are reacting, then definitely it is known to the managers, and then they are going to see that how this could be managed better, right. So, moving further, what we are going to talk about is that fears about the change. So, we talked about 4 different kind of fears, analytical fears. What is that? Sometimes the managers do not communicate to the employees the kind of change that they want to bring, right. So, there is not enough information, the decision that is taken related to the change is not correct, right, or sometimes they are asked to accept or forced to go for a change, right. Then amiable means that yes, it might damage the relationship, there could be confrontations among the employees with the management, okay. And even if they are participating, they are not being recognized for the efforts which should be appreciated by the change managers. And then the drivers. So, if you are in the driver's role, basically sometimes you might lose control over the employees, right, and then it might lead to failure, and then you lose your purpose also, because if you are not able to communicate the objective of the change, how it is going to benefit the employees, what will happen to them. So, are not going to clear the clouds related to uncertainty and anxiety, then as a change driver you are going to lose the control and it might fail, right. And then you need to be very expressive in the sense that please communicate it very effectively to all the stakeholders. So, that they come to know it, they are not ignored about it, right, they come to know about it, and then you provide all the details that is required, because this one fear is there that they think that they are not going to participate and involve them in the change process, right. And what kind of change you want to bring, you are not also discussing, right. Sometimes it may happen by like in most of the mergers and acquisitions, employees are not communicated that yes, your company is going to merge with each other, and they are come to know only about this when the merger has happened. So, what actually happens? This create lot of anxiety and uncertainty among the employees of the acquired company, that what will happen to them, right. And if you are not able to manage these kind of say issues, then the mergers and acquisitions may not succeed, right. So, it is very important to communicate to the people or the stakeholders, allow them to participate in the process, provide full information, so that you can do away with the fears which may come out because of the changes. Moving further, we will also discuss what are the sources why people go for resistance to change, right. And if you look at some of these factors like threat to established resource allocations, right. You already have established norms and now you want to go for a change. So, and people want to maintain a status quo, and if that happens, resistance will be there. Structural inertia, it means that you have already created a structure which is working well and people are not interested to go for any kind of change in the structure of the organization, right. And then people find that the change is not important, the focus of the change is very limited, it is not going to have any significant improvement either in the performance of the organization or the performance of the employees, right. Then the group may also not be very willing, because of the inertia that is created among them, they have been habituated to work in a way and they are comfortable with that one, and that is why they do not want to go for a change. And then it also creates threat to the expertise. What actually happens when people get habituated by working in a particular way, and then they become experts. Now, suppose you want to bring about a change in the structure, system, process or technology, this expertise is being threatened of the employees, because in that case they need to learn new ways of behaving if you are going for a cultural change, new kind of reporting relationship if you are going for structural changes, Suppose you go on for changing the technology, it means that they need to learn how to work with the new technology. So, the kind of expertise or the comfort which they have created for themselves gets threatened, and that also create some kind of resistance, right, and the power relationship also changes. Suppose you go for say structural changes, right. So, structural changes destabilizes the power relationship among the people, because now you are going to establish new relationship because of the structural changes, and that people are not ready to accept, and this also leads to what you call resistance to the any kind of organization change that which the change managers want to bring in the organization. Now, what we are going to discuss some of the factors which could be related to the individuals, right. See, this is one factor, fear to failure. When you are talking about fear to failure, so what you think that okay, if you bring about a change, then there could be loss in productivity, right. You might fail. So, why to go for a change? So, if you have fear of failure, then it is not good. So, there are two concepts which is related to this. One is fear of failure, the other one is fear of success. When I am talking about fear of failure, it means that you are afraid of what will happen, whether you are going to succeed or not, right, or whether you are going to fail. And if there are looming uncertainties and anxieties, then this might lead to fear of failure, right. Another related concept is fear of success. You think whether you are going to succeed or not in the change environment. For example, if you go about a change in the structure, and if other things are not managed, the power relationship is not managed, right, and then you find that the new structure or the new form of the design of the organization, there is less coordination, less integration across say hierarchy or across departments, and then this change is not successful. So, all kind of things might happen, and that is why fear of failure need to be removed, and the important factors, right. That is what I have been discussing about is coming out of your comfort zone, right, because in the new and change environment you need to develop new habits, and people are not comfortable with that, right, because they develop expertise, they develop habits to work in a particular way, right. So, if you go for a change, you also need to ensure that people are ready to risk and come out of their comfort zones, try to learn and behave in new ways, so that it helps the organization to grow and development, right. So, you need to create a culture where people are able to are ready to take risks, right, are trying to be more innovative, and then you need to support this kind of culture, so that people are ready to come out of the comfort zone, right, to break their old habits. Another important factor, most of the people are not able to realize the big picture. Big picture means that how the organization is doing, right, what is its vision, mission, whether the organization is able to maximize its profit or not, what kind of market share is, because they are only concerned about either themselves or with their department goals and objectives. So, if they have a very limited and narrow views about the organization which is limited to self or the department, then you fail to see the big picture, and you think that any kind of change, if it is not impacting you, you will not accept it, and then you will not align your activities along with the change that is to be brought by the organization. So, it is very important to realize the big picture, and if you are not able to do it, then it is not good. Next, accepting the change. Are you ready to accept the change, the new system of control? For example, the reporting relationship changes and your manager is someone else, right, and he is going to control your behavior. Are you ready to accept this kind of thing or not? So, if you are not able to accept, then it shows that there is a resistance, and that need to be looked into by the change managers and managed. Then the support system, it is very important, because if you want to bring about any kind of change, then the top management should come out with enabling factors which are going to support the management and the organization to ensure that the change is successful. Okay. So, how this support system is created? By aligning it with other factors first, and then providing resources that is required in terms of help, support, right, to the people, so that they are able to accept change, and if it is not there, if there is no support system that you have developed to bring the change or implement the change successfully, then there could be lot of resistance about it. Then the next one is not being pragmatic. You have a very closed mind, you are not open, you only think about self interest, right. So, if you are not pragmatic, I do not think about others, right. You have a very narrow minded approach, a very close mind, and you are thinking about yourself, then you will not accept change, because you think that there is nothing good for you in this particular change. So, why you should go for it? While it might be good for others, but it is not good for you. So, if you go by this closed mind, then what will happen? You are not going to accept this kind of change, you are not ready to accept, and there is going to be resistance. Next, lack of faith. You do not believe in the management, the change managers, because there is a gap in the communication. So, it is very very important to create trust and commitment, and for that the managers need to communicate to the employees why they want to go for a change, how it is going to benefit them, right. Because if you have lost faith and trust among the employees are going to resist. So, before you implement the change, and once you have identified what kind of change you need to bring in, you need to communicate to the employees why you are going for it, what kind of benefits it will have for the organization, right, what is your stake in it, right, and these steps might create some faith in the employees, and they might move to realize that yes, the change is good for the organization and good for me as well, and this would reduce the resistance. Then another important thing, not willing to learn or develop new ideas, right, and that happens because of old habits, right, established ways of doing work. So, that is what we have discussed, that yes, if you are not willing to learn or work in the new structure, new system, new technology, then these are the issues which might come up, and then you resist to the changes. Moving further, yes, how it is going to impact me? Fear of personal impact. You are not concerned about the organization growth and development, department or the unit of the organization, you are only concerned about yourself, that in what way this change is going to impact you. If you think that this change is not going to impact you, or it is not going to have any kind of influence on you, then probably you do not react, right, and you are in a position to say that okay, let us go for it, but if you think that it is going to affect you, your status, your power, your position, your relationship, then you do not accept it, right. So, the management or the change managers have to look into these issues to ensure that these kind of things are taken care, so that people are going to readily accept any kind of change that is brought in. Then uncertainty. So, any kind of uncertainty is also important, and then you need to see that how this uncertainty can be brought in to ensure that this resistance is reduced. So, you need to say that in what way this is going to benefit the employees, the organization, what are the expected outcomes that you have, and in what way this derived benefits is going to help the employees as well as the organizations, right. So, if you are able to clear the clouds related to this, then you have less uncertainty, because people think that how this change in the future is going to affect them, what will happen to them. So, communication with from the change managers can change the situation. Now, see what are the signs. Since we talked about active and passive resistance, now what we are going to discuss is that when people are actively resisting change, what happens? They become critical, they try to find out the fault with any kind of change that you want to bring, they think that is a ridiculous thing that the management wants to bring out, right. They also appeal to the fear, they actually communicate to the employees that it is not good. So, they try to create some kind of fear psychosis among the people, and then using facts selectively, they do not bring all the facts together, they use those facts selectively depending upon their interests. They say that okay, these are the things that would be done and it will not be good or beneficial for us. So, let us not go for it, right, and then they start blaming and excusing the top management. Sometimes they even engage in sabotaging or damaging activities, right. So, suppose you want to bring want to introduce a new technology and you got the new technology. So, they will go for some kind of sabotaging activities and then tell you, see, you have brought this technology, but it is not effective, it is not working, it is not good, right. And sometimes they also use intimidation or threats. They threat people, they try to threaten people or even the change managers that if you bring this change or if you want to bring introduce any kind of change, we will not accept it, we will boycott it. For example, the moment you say that you want to bring about a change in the performance management system to make it more objective, there could be intimidation or threat from the employees, especially those who are not performing well, and then you start manipulating, right. And that is what most of the managers do, who are not ready to accept change, and they become active, so that this change is not going to be implemented. So, you go for distorting the facts, you create some kind of blocks, so that the change is not going to be successfully implemented. So, you try to create some kind of obstacles in the process of the implementing the change. You undermine it to think that no, this change is not going to be effective, and if this change is brought, it would be insignificant, it does not make any difference in the organization, its productivity in performance, right. And then you start rumoring about it. You tell people, see, this last time this kind of change was brought and it did not bring success. So, you basically create stories which are not correct, which are fake basically, and then you spread it. So, that people go by these rumors and do not accept change, and then you keep on arguing why you want to go for it. So, you become very, very critical. So, if you engage in these kind of activities, this shows that yes, these are, you are very active, you do not want to go for a change. Then passive changes. So, passive resistance is where you basically you are not vocal or expressive, but you are not interested to accept the change. So, what you do? Even you say that okay, let us go for this kind of change, but do not comply with the things which is required to go for the change, right. You do not want to implement at your level, right, or you try to delay it, or if somebody else is doing, even you do not allow them to do it, like dragging one's feet, right. And sometimes you feel you show your ignorance, so I did not do it. Yes, is it what we need to do it? So, actually you are not active, but passively you show all signs, all such signs which actually suggest that you are not ready to accept the change, and you become a passive onlooker. So, you are not interested in it, right. So, you without informations, you give different kind of suggestions, you do not provide any kind of help or support to implement the change successfully at your level. So, that it gets blocked, right. And then you stand by and allow change to fail, and then you smile if something does not happen, since you are not interested, you do not want it. If it fails, then you say, see, this is what I was expecting, this is not going to happen. Why, I do not know why the management did bring this about this kind of change in the organization, right. So, all these are passive signs of resistance. So, what we have discussed now is signs of resistance, both active and passive. Moving further, so we have identified now those factors that why the change is resisted, like you do not want to go for it because you do not like it, you have discomfort because of the uncertainty associated with the change. Then you look into more negative aspects of the change instead of looking at the positive aspects of the change, right. And you also try to link it with the culture and identity of the organization, right. And then you see that yes, the kind of psychological contract, the agreement that was there between the employer and the employee is being breached, that is being violated because you want to go for a change, right. And then you are not basically convinced, or you do not have that confidence that why we want to go for a change. So, there is a lack of conviction, you are not sure that why the organization is going for a change, and also there is less clarity that what is needed, right. So, when you go for diagnosis of the change, you should be very clear of what kind of change you want to bring, how it is going to be aligned with others, and similarly before implementing the change, you also need to ensure that this is managed well, right. Then you have a belief that yes, the change that is being proposed is not enough, right, timing is not good, the organization is going for so many changes which is not good for the organization, right. And how all these changes are going to affect our life, it is become hell, how long we are going to keep on tolerating different kind of changes that is happening, right. it is also clashes with your integrity and ethics, right. You do not think that is right or wrong. Okay. And then you try to relate it with your previous experiences of change. You think that the previous experience of the change was not good for you. So, you say that yes, this time the same thing is going to happen, and how the change is being managed. You are not sure that okay, the way the change is being managed this time is good, in the sense that the process through which the change is being implemented, you do not agree with that one. So, you want another process to be adopted by the managers, so that they go for these kind of changes. So, what we have discussed so far is that resistance and the various factors which causes resistance, and what are the activities, the actions, active and passive both, which are shown by the managers. Thank you very much.